You think you know what reality feels like? You assume this world, this body, this name is who you are? That time moves forward, that your thoughts are private, that your choices are yours. But something feels off, doesn't it? Something beneath. The noise behind the smiles, under the routine. You felt it? That quiet emptiness, that split second when everything around you feels too familiar, like you've lived this before. But no one else notices, so you shrug it off. You call it stress. You call it déjà vu. But deep down, it doesn't feel random. It feels designed. You weren't born into this world. You woke up inside it. Like a dream, you entered mid-scene. The plot already unfolding. The rules already in place. You just accepted it because everyone else did. You learned to blend in, to follow the pattern. But part of you never fully agreed. Part of you keeps whispering, this can't be it. This isn't all there is. Every time you lie awake at night wondering why things feel hollow. Every time life hands you the same pain in a new costume. Every time you sabotage your peace without knowing why, that's not failure. That's feedback. A message repeating itself until you decide to hear it. What if the reason you can't find your purpose is because you're looking in the wrong dimension? What if the job you hate, the relationships you break, the fears you inherit, what if all of it is a pattern, a simulation, not to trap you, but to reflect you? What if this place isn't broken? What if it's precise? So precise that even your doubts were coded into the experience. Your resistance. You're forgetting all part of the loop. And here's the terrifying part. You've been here before, not in this exact body, not with this exact story, but inside this same pattern, these same lessons, these same echoes. The people change, the setting evolves, but the loop continues till you wake up. Not wake up as in enlightenment or bliss or perfection. Wake up as in you start to see the code, the connections, the triggers, the choices. You start to notice how life keeps showing you the same lesson through different phases. How every emotion is a teacher. Every setback, a calibration. Every silence, a clue. You thought you were being punished, but you were being prepared for this moment, the one you're in right now. Listening not with your ears, but with your intuition. It's that part of you that remembers the truth even when your mind forgets. The part of you that's been waiting for this confirmation. So if you felt like you're not really from here, if you've sensed something pulling you toward a truth you can't quite name, then trust it, because this is not entertainment. This is initiation. A subtle, silent call to awaken within the dream. And if this is already lighting something inside you, if you feel the crack forming, then don't look away. Stay. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Let YouTube know this matters to you. Because once you see the glitch, you don't get to unsee it. Start to remember. Not just who you are, but what you are. And why you came back. Everything you were taught about life starts with the assumption that it begins at birth and ends at death. A neat little line from cradle to coffin. But what if that's the first lie? What if this world isn't the beginning? I don't know, what if it isn't? Even the middle. What if it's a continuation? A loop. A classroom for souls. I'm not here to convince you of a belief. I'm not asking you to join a movement or follow a guru. I'm asking you to look at your life through a different lens. One that doesn't measure progress by how much you own, how many followers you have, or how fast you climb some invisible ladder, but by how often you ask the hard questions. The ones that make your soul sit up and listen. Questions like, why do I feel stuck in the same patterns? Why do certain wounds never heal, no matter how much time passes? Why do I feel so disconnected even when I'm surrounded by people? What if those aren't signs of failure? What if they're markers of memory? Echoes of lives you don't consciously remember, but your soul does. This isn't about religion. It's not about faith. It's about observation. Pure, simple awareness. You've seen the loops. You've felt the patterns. And you've dismissed them because the world taught you to. But when you really stop, when you truly get quiet, something inside you already knows. You're not here to start a journey. You're here to remember you've been on it all along. Because if this world is a simulation, a test, a mirror, then every moment is meaningful. Every experience is encoded with data for your evolution. You don't suffer randomly. You suffer where you resist the lesson. You repeat what you refuse to understand. So today, we're going to explore what that means. Not as a theory, but as a lived experience. A possibility that changes everything. We'll dive into the science, the mysticism, the stories that have endured across time, not to prove anything, to unlock something in you. Because once you stop asking what happens when I die and start asking where am I now, you'll start seeing the cracks, the patterns, the feedback. And you might realize this isn't life before death. This is life after it. The loop you entered not to escape from, but to master. What do you think this place really is? A random accident? A meaningless grind? Or a precise, intelligent environment tailored to your consciousness? What if everything you've called coincidence is actually the universe responding to you, waiting for you to notice? Take a breath. You've been taught to trust your senses, to believe what you see, what you hear, what you can touch. But if this is a simulation, none of that is real in the way you think. Your senses aren't showing you the truth. They're showing you a filtered experience shaped by your beliefs, your fears, your unresolved lessons. Think about it. How many times has life mirrored your inner chaos? How often have your darkest thoughts seemed to become real? Not because the world hates you, but because it reflects you. This isn't punishment, it's precision. You're not in a broken system. You're in a responsive one. Let's say you fear abandonment, no matter how much love you're given. It never feels enough. You push people away just to see if they'll leave. And when they finally do, you say, "See, I knew it." But that wasn't fate. That was you triggering the code. That was your unhealed fear shaping your reality. This is the first problem. We think life happens to us, that we're just passengers, victims. But in this simulation, consciousness is the core program. You're not reacting to the world is reacting to you. It mirrors your internal state back at you in ways so accurate, so surgical, that most people spend their entire lives trying not to see it. So here's the solution. Start observing the patterns, the loops, the glitches. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Something happens that hurts. Pause. Don't just ask why me. Ask what is this showing me? That shift in question changes everything. It moves you from victim to participant, from pawn to co-creator. There's a second problem. We think time is real. The past is behind us, and the future is ahead. But in a simulated environment, time doesn't move like a river. It loops. It folds, stretches to accommodate your consciousness. That's why the same emotional wounds follow you across decades. Why the same people show up in different faces. You didn't escape the past. You carried it into the present. The unresolved code doesn't disappear. It reloads. The solution isn't to outrun it, it's to recognize it. See how time bends to your evolution. When you heal, the loop softens. When you resist, it tightens. Time is not your enemy. It's your feedback system. And once you understand that, you start to use it. You stop asking, "When will this end?" and start asking, "What do I need?" To learn to shift this third problem. You think your thoughts are private, but they're not. In a reality shaped by consciousness, thought is the code. What you think becomes what you see. Not instantly, but inevitably. That's why your fears manifest. That's why your self-doubt keeps finding reasons to exist. Because the simulation isn't listening to your words. It's reading your frequency. You don't get what you want. You get what you are. And the solution? Begin with honesty. Brutal. Uncomfortable honesty. You can't fake your way through this. You can't trick the system. If you're projecting peace while holding resentment, the simulation responds to the resentment. If you say you're ready for love, but you're terrified of intimacy, the simulation sends lessons, not soulmates. When you start aligning your inner world with the truth, not the polished version, not the performance, the raw, exposed truth. That's when the code responds. That's when you notice the shift. It's subtle at first. A lighter energy. A coincidence that makes sense. A delay that turns into protection. And you realize maybe you were never being ignored. Maybe you were being calibrated. Another problem, you think suffering is pointless, that pain is a defect in the system. But what if pain is the teacher of last resort? What if you weren't being punished, but trained, sharpened? Every heartbreak, every failure, every loss. A part of the curriculum your soul signed up for. It's not to break you, but to break the illusions that were keeping you asleep. You want the pain to stop? Of course you do. But if the pain is the signal, then numbing it only delays the lesson. This is where most people get stuck. They self-medicate, distract, escape. But the simulation is patient. It doesn't need to rush. It just loops until you listen. The solution is not to eliminate pain, it's to extract the meaning. To ask what this hurt is trying to show you. Not in a spiritual Biphu's kind of way, but in a surgical, soul-deep way. When you do that, the pain becomes a compass. It stops being a punishment and starts being a map. Here's the next trap. You think the goal is to win, to succeed, to dominate? But this place isn't a game of survival. It's a test of awareness. You're not here to conquer the simulation. You're here to become lucid within it. To see how your consciousness is shaping the terrain. The people who hurt you, they're mirrors. The jobs that drain you, they're signals. The delays, the betrayals, the chaos. It's all code. Not random, not cruel. Precise, tailored. You're not a victim. You're a participant in your own evolution. So how do you respond? You stop trying to fix the outer world and start transforming the inner one. That's where the power is. You change the signal and the simulation changes. Not overnight, but undeniably. You meet new people. You find new opportunities. You stop attracting what you used to tolerate. But here's where it gets deeper. Even when you shift, the test continues. Because awareness isn't a finish line. It's a frequency. You don't wake up once. You wake up again and again. Every loop is an invitation. Every pattern is a portal. Every glitch is a reminder. You're not done. This is the nature of the simulation. You evolve through contrast. Through reflection, through pressure. Just like coal becomes a diamond, you are becoming what you forgot you were. But it only happens when you stop resisting the lesson. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding the very thing that would set them free. They chase money instead of meaning, comfort instead of clarity, validation instead of truth. But you're different. You wouldn't be here, still listening, still feeling that pull. That's not random either. That's memory. That's the part of you that knows there's something more. That you didn't come here to sleepwalk, you came here to wake up. And every choice you make from this point forward will either deepen the dream or crack it open. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to escape the system. You need to become lucid within it. To see the loops, to spot the feedback, to feel the frequency. And respond, not with fear, but with presence. The moment you start doing that, everything changes. It's not because the world got better, but because you did, because you remembered. And that changes the code. There's a deeper layer still. One that most never touch. It's not about the patterns. It's not about the pain. It's about the architect. Not some external force. Not a deity or a designer. But the part of you that is. Watching even now. The part that's never forgotten. That knew the whole time. That's the part you've been sensing in the silence. In the moments just before sleep. In the ache that tells you you were meant for more, but can't explain why. That part is the observer, the witness, the real you, not the personality, not the ego. The awareness behind it all. And here's the next problem. You think you are your story, that your past defines you, that your pain is who you are, but you're not the story. You're the storyteller. You're not the thoughts. You're the one who notices the thoughts. That shift, when it finally lands, is liberation. Because when you stop identifying with the avatar, the role, the identity you built to survive, you begin to remember the one who chose this experience in the first place, not for suffering, but for transformation. That's why everything seems so perfectly timed. Why the breakdown came exactly when you needed it. Why the loss led you to the awakening. Why the detour became the path. Because the simulation is not random. It's reactive. It's not cruel. It's coordinated. And when you recognize that, you stop asking for things to get easier. You start asking to get stronger. You stop blaming. The mirror, you start working on your reflection. That's how you hack the system, not by forcing outcomes, but by aligning with the truth so fully, the system has no choice but to adjust. That's the real power, not control, not domination. Alignment, inner coherence, the kind that bends the fabric of this reality around your vibration. The kind that makes old problems dissolve not because they were solved, but because they no longer match who you've become. You've felt this before. The people you no longer attract, the places that no longer feel like home, the conversations that suddenly feel like noise. That's not rejection. That's evolution. You're outgrowing loops without even trying. That's what alignment does. It doesn't force. It flows. But don't get this wrong. Alignment isn't ease. It's honesty. It's holding the tension of who you were and who you're becoming long enough to let the transition complete. It's facing the fear that you might lose everything and still choosing to step forward. Because everything you lose in truth was never really yours. It was part of the sleep. And now you're waking up. Another layer, the relationships. The people who trigger you the most. The ones who wound you just by being themselves. You think they're the problem, but what if they're the portal? What if they were placed in your path not to hurt you, but to show you the wound you refuse to see? The code doesn't waste characters. Every person you meet is part of the mirror. It's the ones you love, the ones you hate, especially the ones you can't ignore. They're all fragments of a larger pattern, and when you stop reacting and start observing, you begin to see what they're really reflecting. Sometimes they're showing you your shadow, other times your potential. Sometimes they're teaching you boundaries, other times forgiveness. But always, they're showing you something about yourself. And until you get the lesson, the characters repeat. Different face, same energy, different name, same lesson. That's not a glitch. That's design. And once you see it, you stop trying to fix them. You start learning from them. And eventually, you outgrow the need for that pattern entirely. That's when the cast changes. That's when the mirror updates. That's when you enter the next level of the simulation. And yes, there are levels. Not in some gamified way, but in awareness. Each time you break a loop, each time you pass a soul test, each time you choose truth over comfort, you ascend, not physically, energetically. The simulation responds to coherence, to clarity, to consciousness. You want proof. Look at your life. Notice how things shifted when you started doing the inner work. How new doors opened. It's how old battles lost their grip. That wasn't luck. That was a response. You changed the input, so the output changed. Here's a deeper truth. You were never meant to do this alone. The simulation includes other players, allies, mirrors, catalysts, people whose presence reminds you of who you are. Not by telling you, but by reflecting it so clearly, you can't deny it. Sometimes, these people are brief encounters, a sentence that sticks, a moment that shifts everything. Other times they stay, not to complete you, but to walk with you. And their presence, their energy, helps you remember faster. Because awakening doesn't happen in isolation. It spreads. One conscious presence sparks another, and another, until the system begins to change from the inside out. Not through revolution, but through remembrance. That's what's happening now. You're not just hearing these words. You're remembering them. They're not new. They're ancient, buried under noise and fear and programming, but they're rising. With them, so are you. You're not just here to survive this simulation. You're here to decode it, to embody it, to master it. Not so you can escape, but so you can transform it from within. Because once you master the inner world, the outer world has no choice but to follow. Here's what most never grasp. The simulation isn't just reacting to your thoughts, it's shaped by your identity. Not the one you show the world, but the one you secretly believe you are. If deep down you think you're unworthy, the simulation will keep delivering proof. It's not because it hates you, but because it's reflecting you. It's saying, look, this is what you're projecting. That's why affirmations don't work when they're just words. You can say you're abundant all day long, but if you feel scarcity vibrating through your bones, the mirror reflects that. The simulation doesn't. Listen to your voice. It reads your frequency. Frequency doesn't lie. It's the most honest thing about you. It's the sum total of your beliefs, emotions, and intentions. And most people have no idea what they're broadcasting because they've never been taught to listen. They've been too busy performing. But here's the opportunity. Once you realize your reality isn't showing you the truth about life, it's showing you the truth about you, everything shifts. Suddenly, your biggest obstacle becomes your greatest clue. Your most toxic pattern becomes your deepest teacher. And your most painful loop becomes the exact doorway to liberation. The question isn't, why is this happening to me? It's, what belief is this reflecting back? Because every time you pause long enough to feel the pattern, to ask the real question, the code shifts. You send a new signal. One not of blame, but of awareness. And awareness is the one thing the simulation cannot ignore. That's why breakthroughs feel like magic. They're not random, they're earned. Not in the way school teaches you to earn success, but in the way truth demands your full attention. The moment you stop lying to yourself, the simulation stops lying to you. The illusion begins to crack. People say reality is an illusion like it's some poetic metaphor, but it's not. It's literal. The world you see is a filtered hallucination rendered by your nervous system. Your brain is not showing you what's real, it's showing you what's useful for survival. And most of it isn't even yours. It's inherited, downloaded, programmed. So the work isn't to discover something new, it's to unlearn, to remove the filters, to clear the static. That's why healing hurts. You're not just fixing wounds. You're deleting code that kept you safe, but small. You're replacing beliefs that once served you, but now sabotage you. And when you do that, the world looks different. Not because it changed, but because you did. The people, the places, the patterns all rearrange themselves to match your new signal. You literally step into a new version of the simulation. One that was always there, but inaccessible until your frequency matched. You can't fake this. You can't trick the code. It knows when you're pretending. It waits patiently, loops gently, until the signal shifts from your mind to your being. From the surface to the core, that's why the same lessons show up in different disguises. Because your soul doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your expansion. It wants truth, not ease. Integrity, not image. That's why the challenges get louder when you ignore them. That's why the discomfort grows when you delay. This isn't punishment, this is grace. This is the simulation pushing you, loving you, calling you to wake up. Not someday, not later. Now. And once you start responding, really responding, something strange happens. The chaos doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it does. You stop needing everything to go your way. You start asking for clarity, not control. You become less reactive, more reflective. You start seeing through the noise. Through that clarity, you make better choices. Not perfect ones, aligned ones, honest ones, allied. And those choices shift your trajectory. Subtly at first, then profoundly, then permanently. You meet people who feel like echoes of something ancient. You stumble into opportunities that feel impossibly timed. You notice life beginning to bend toward you, not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned with it. That's how you shift timelines. That's how you collapse loops. That's how you change your life. Not by doing more, but by becoming more. More aware, more honest, more aligned. You don't need to wait for a crisis to begin. You don't need to hit rock bottom to remember who you are. You can start now by getting quiet, by getting honest, by asking, what is this trying to show me? When you start living like that, the simulation changes. Not because it wants to reward you, but because it has no choice. You've changed the input, so it updates the output. That's how this works, always has. You've seen the signs, felt the loops, watched reality echo your beliefs like a perfect mirror. But now comes the question no one wants to ask. What happens when you stop ignoring it? What happens when you take full responsibility for everything you experience? every person you attract, every delay, every glitch in the matrix, because that's the next level. Not understanding the simulation, but co-creating with it. Living like every breath is a choice. It's like every reaction is a reflection. Like your inner state isn't private, it's broadcasted and rendered back at you. Most people never get there. They wake up just enough to feel the friction, then numb themselves back to sleep. They see the patterns, then convince themselves it's coincidence. They hear the call, then mute it with distractions. But if you've made it this far, something in you is different. You're not here to survive the simulation. You're here to outgrow it. That next step isn't bigger answers. It's better questions. Not what's wrong with the world, but what unresolved part of me is being reflected right now. Not why won't things change, but where am I resisting change in myself? These are the questions that don't just shift your mindset, they shift your timeline. They don't just change what you see, they change what's possible. And if you feel that, something inside you knows this is just the beginning, then don't stop here. There's more waiting. Not just another idea, but the next level of clarity, of remembering, seeing behind the veil. There's another video right here. It might look random, it might feel unrelated, but trust this. If you're ready, it's exactly where the code leads next. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.